Welcome to today's show. Today's topic is this. I don't want to say it. Sit back and relax, and welcome to today's show. So you may or may not have noticed, but my intro is a little bit different. This is no longer going to be the Daily Fire. That show is dead and gone. Dead and gone. So if you're just tuning in, this is episode number 1 of the Stand Again podcast. So that's right. So it's called it Stand Again. And this is going to be kind of the kickoff of what this is. And I have felt in my heart that I needed to shift my direction, my trajectory, the things that I talk about, what I'm doing. Because I'm all about becoming more, becoming better, personal development, right? Becoming the best version of yourself. But the reality is, in some extent, I've been lying, right? And what I mean by that is that, like, I'm not sharing the full truth. I have not been sharing the full truth of why I even care, why I even want to be in personal development, like why this even matters to me. And God placed it on my heart a long time ago, and I flat out didn't have the courage to go. I didn't have the courage to do what He was asking me to do. It was a long time ago, like 10 years ago, and I didn't have the courage to do it. I think everything was too fresh. I felt like an imposter. I felt like I couldn't do it. I felt like there was no value for me to add, and so I didn't. I kind of started and then I backed off and I didn't do it. And I'm to a point in my life where it's pretty obvious what I need to do. It's pretty obvious the direction I need to go in. And it's pretty obvious where this needs to lead because I know that there is a darkness that is facing a particular kind of person that there is just not a lot of, I don't know, there's stuff out there to help, but the reality is it never helped me. And I had to fight my way through this dark pit. And what I'm speaking to, and this is where Stand Again comes from, is the loss of a child. Right? I'm talking about what it's like as a father or a mother to bury your children, right? To have your children pass away. And it's unfortunately it's a club that I didn't want to be a part of. And there ended up being a whole lot more people in that club than I ever anticipated or ever thought or ever considered. And you kind of had two different versions of the people that I found in that club. There's one adage that says time heals all, right? Time heals all of your wounds, and I don't agree with that. I believe time distances yourself from the tragedy and the pain, but it doesn't heal them. It doesn't allow you to. You don't heal like a cut on your arm, and then all of a sudden it's healed, and you might have a little scar there, but you're going to move forward, and you operate as normal, right? The loss of a child for me, and for many that I spoke to, was it, it's not even like I spent so much time trying to figure out how to move forward, like just how to become me again. And all along the way, it was just like everyone that would give me advice, everyone that would tell me what I should do, what I shouldn't do. There were very few people that had actually gone through what I had gone through that were giving me this advice. Because most people that had gone through what I had gone through, they were in the same place I was. They weren't fit to give me any kind of advice, right? No different than I was fit to give them any kind of advice because I was sitting in the deepest, darkest place I could ever imagine. Like I remember sitting there for probably about a year after he passed away. I would go almost nightly to the cemetery and I would go lay down on his grave and I would put my hand on his little marker and I would just be there with him. And I would sleep there with him. And I would get woken up every morning to the sprinklers that were turning on, right, to water the cemetery grass. And this was like a normal pattern for me. And then I would get up, I would go back to my car, and I would get in my car and I would drive back to my house. I would get in the shower, and I would pretend like everything was okay, right? I found that the world moved on way too fast, right? Way too fast. See, the difference is as a parent who's buried somebody, who's lost a child, you don't move on. The goal is to try to figure out how to move forward. But the rest of the world, they don't move forward. They move on, right? The rest of the world it's like it didn't even happen. they go about their business, they go about their days, and I don't blame other people for it, even people that are really close to me. I don't blame them for doing this or being this way, but I had to figure out how to navigate, and I didn't know how. And so the only way I knew how to do it was what I've watched a lot of people do, which is close off. Right? And I believe in God. I believe there's life after this death. So I had that knowledge, but I just closed off my emotions because my only way to move on there was no move on, but my only way to move forward was to take all of the pain and pretend it wasn't there and stuff it away, and just make it not there. And I fought for so long to find any true peace, right? Any true peace or purpose in my life or any type of power in my life. Like I fought to do it. And it was like there was like the Trevor that was like pre my son passing away. And then there was the Trevor post my son passing away. And my son Micah dying wasn't the end of the story, right? I actually have had a lot of loss, right? I've had three children who have their angel wings now. Right, and my next two children, Rachel and Jacob, were both stillborns, born in my bathtub. And there's a lot of those memories. I had become so numb as a human being that I just kind of threw those deaths in with that death, and I just put them all together, and I locked them up into this place that was just locked up, and I left parts of myself along the way, and that's what I think is the problem. This is what I know I can help with, because I left parts of me, right? So we say move forward, and you move forward, but you lock up, you lose part of yourself along the way, and if you don't have any way to regain part of those parts of yourself that you shut down because of what you're going through, you end up living a life that's almost like a different life. It's like everything's different, and not different in a good way. It's different in a way where there's like a portion of you that just never moves, never grows, never expands. It's like you're running a race with an anchor on, or you got a ball and chain and you're trying to run and somebody's holding you back. And that's what it feels like. And for me, it created this constant game of never feeling like I was enough. And I already had that narrative when I was younger, but I was able to fight through it pretty easily. But all of a sudden, I lose my son, and it just spiraled that story that I wasn't enough. And I could never stay in one place, like where I physically lived and the jobs I had, even as I became an entrepreneur. Like I was always looking for something else, and I could never figure out why. I was always wondering, why am I doing this? Like, why do it's like I would build my life to a certain point, and then I would cut it down. And I did it over and over. I started to procrastinate things that I'd never procrastinated before. I started to act in a way that I'd never acted before, until one day that was just who I was. Or at least that's what I had accepted for who I was. The problem is that wasn't who I was. That was a broken version of me who'd put on a smile and had to be strong because I had another son. My other son now is 21. He's 21 right now. So I had another son. I had a wife. I had a family. I had to take care of them somehow. And who was I to be the guy who couldn't be happy? And it wasn't allowed because I had to go to work. I had to do all these things. Like I had to live life. And by doing that, I just closed everything off. And then I became a version of me that was not me. And some of the patterns and the habits of who I had become, they were so damaging. They were so damaging, and they continued this cycle of throwing me into bouts of depression that I couldn't tie or associate to anything, and really didn't realize that they were tied directly back to that day. Right? That day with my son Micah, when the doctor looks at me and says, it's time, and I say, okay. And as I'm holding my little boy in my arms, she reaches over, grabs the intubator out of his throat. I can still remember what it sounded like when she pulled it out of his throat, pulls it out, and then I feel my son take his last breath. That's a pretty shitty thing. There's not a day that goes by that my son is not on my mind. But for so many years, it was not a happy thought. For so many years, there were memories about my son that I wanted to forget. I wanted to forget moments leading. I wanted to forget all that. I only wanted to remember the good stuff, but I couldn't. And so I stuffed them all down. And then there was this very long period where I felt like I couldn't be happy, because if I was happy, that would mean I disrespected my son, that I didn't care about him. Because how on earth can I be happy all the while my son passed away and he had to go through what he went through? And how dare I? How dare I? And there was a gamut of emotions, but I went on a journey. I'll call it a journey, but it was a journey of trying to figure out me. Like trying to figure out, why am I the way I am? Because it doesn't resonate. It doesn't feel like it's me when I look into my core of my soul of who I am. But it's what I was doing. It's the way I was showing up. It's the way I was acting. So I'm like, why am I doing all of this? Why am I this way? And I went on this journey to figure it out. Right? I hired all sorts of different coaches and mentors. And I realize now, looking back, I had disguised these coaches, these mentors, every person around me, all these things I was doing. I had disguised it as I was just trying to make more money. I was trying to have a better marriage. I was trying to be a better father. All these things, not realizing that I was attacking the wrong problem. And that unless I faced the reality that parts of me had been so closed off and so broken, that unless I faced that reality, there was no chance of me stepping forward and being who I was supposed to be, because the pain was too intense. And I didn't want to admit that. I didn't want to admit that I was weak. I didn't want to admit that I wasn't strong enough to handle it, to deal with it. And so I didn't. I just sat there and I lived in this world, this fake reality, while I watched the rest of the world move on. I watched the rest of the world do what they did. I watched the rest of the world just become who they became. It was horrible. It was horrible. I don't think there's a parent alive that wouldn't hear what I'm saying, and even if they've not been through it, have some bit of at least a feeling and a sense of how horrific that is to go through. And I got to go through it 3 times. I think God was really trying to teach me a lesson. But I've figured some things out, and that's really the intent of this show. I have figured out that there is a way you can stand again. I've figured out that through the pain, it can actually become your liberation. I've figured out if you can focus your patterns and habits on the right thing, that your tragic loss is no longer something that defines you in a negative way. It's no longer something that is this thing that brings up raw fear and anger and frustration. The pain will always exist, but avoiding the pain doesn't make it go away. It makes you go away. And you live your life in quiet desperation, just hoping that someday, magically, it gets fixed, it gets solved, and you get to be you. And you might be years away, like years removed. Your child may have passed away years ago, like mine. And what's crazy is I've uncovered what I did and the way I caged up my emotions, my patterns, everything about who I was, the trauma that it was to hold your son in his arms or in your arms when he takes his last breath, the trauma of that. I've been able to actually find me again. I've been able to find peace. I've been able to find happiness. I've been able to find power and certainty because I've been able to figure out who I am again. But until you do that, until you truly open it up, there's no chance. And this is a problem with the industry. Everybody that I had known that was like when it was, especially when my son first passed away, like I'm talking to people that had never experienced what I'd experienced. And these people are teaching me stuff that they read from a book. They're saying this is the grieving process. This is what you should go through. And I'm like, dude, you've never done what I did. How do you know? And they would say, well, we have statistics and we have this and this will help and this will blah. I'm like, yeah, but you don't know because you haven't done it. And so a lot of the things they would tell me to do, they just didn't work for me. I couldn't find a solution, so I had to create my own. And I have. I've created a map. I've created a map for how you can not just move forward, but all of you can move forward. And that there's no part of you that has to remain broken. That you can be whole and complete again. And that you can stand in that place. And as a parent going through that, man, if someone had told me that, there was hope that I could not, that the pain I felt, the despair, the pit, the darkness that surrounded me constantly, that I would someday, if I could do some, that there was some way for me to not take a decade to get to that place, or actually to never get there. I mean, that's what's so crazy. It's just because on the surface, I seemed okay, I wasn't. And if I truly let myself feel it, I was not okay. Not okay. So whether you've lost a child or not, if you know somebody who has, I want you to consider for just a second that they are not okay. They're not okay. And there's a part of them that died with their child. And it only died because they took it and they locked it up. What's crazy is they did it most likely, same reason I did it, is because the memory of them was, if I move forward without those memories anchored into me, like it's weird, it's this weird mindset, because it's like, if I do that, I'm disrespecting them somehow. I'm making their life like it didn't matter, which nothing could be further from the truth. So I sit here today, and my children, I am grateful to have had them for the time that I did. And it's through me discovering me, through the pain, that I've been able to stand where I'm at, that I have the life that I have, that I can love my life the way it is now. And the cool part about it is what I've learned over, it took me a decade to get there. It took a long time. It doesn't need to take that long. But what I've learned is that there's some systematic things that you can do. You're in control. Like, you can actually control this. You don't have to feel the way you feel all the time. You don't have to feel this way ever. And you can truly stand in a place where who you are is who you are. Not in spite of the loss of your child, but because of the loss of your child. That you draw strength from the pit, from the darkness that surrounds you. And then you honor their memory by stepping forward and being all that God put you on this planet to be. So, I get it. This is a deep, heavy conversation. It's a deep, heavy conversation for anyone to have, whether you've lost a child or not. But I want you to consider there are people around you that are hurting. And so if you're one of those people, reach out to me. I don't know why God has called me to do this and to speak about this, and maybe that's why He sent me. Maybe that's why I got to experience this this thing 3 times, right? Maybe that's why. But if you know somebody, if there's somebody you know that's struggling, send this to them. Send this to them and let them hear. They need to know that there's hope, and they need to know, most importantly, that it is okay not to be okay. And the rest of the world can just screw off. So that's all I got for you. So as you sign off today, I just want to remind you that there is hope. There is hope. And through your pain becomes your liberation. Through this pain that you're experiencing becomes the new version of who you are. It does, I promise you. I'm a testament to that. I'm standing here as a witness that it can happen, and it will happen. But you're in control, because you could go your entire life and not let it happen, and you could force it to not happen, and you could live in quiet desperation. Right? Literally a fraction of who you were meant to be on this planet. Or you can have the opposite. You have the opposite. It's absolutely a life that is unrecognizable. And when your reunion with your sweet little angel comes one day, wow, what a sweet moment that will be. What a sweet moment that will be. So, this is your boy, Trevor J. White, signing off, reminding you that there is hope and you can stand again.